KAOS 89.3 Olympia. Hi, low-profile audience. We're back again with Mike Coleman for part 2 of his interview with Alison O'Donnell. And Mike, if you want to talk a little bit more about how this interview went for you. This was your first time conducting one, right?
Yeah, it was the first time conducting one on my own.
Did you know much of her music beyond Mellow Candle before you went into researching?
No, I knew very little. I've been listening to the Mellow Candle Swaddling Songs record, which kind of stands in the universe as this, sparkling star. It's quite a cult, favorite, and has been for many, many years. I didn't know much about Alison's other output, other recordings prior to our interview, but I did a bunch of research before I spoke with her. She's an interesting person, a real interesting figure, and so it was a real treat.
It sure was. It's such a fun conversation to listen to. So I think we're gonna pick up where we left off a couple weeks ago. Here is Alison O'Donnell, part 2.
Let's talk a little bit about your moving to South Africa and what that was all about, and the beginning of how Flibbertigibbet began, and the record "Whistling Jigs to the Moon" was recorded. Who was in that group, and so on. That record, by the way, was recorded in 1977. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 78. Well, recorded in 77. Yeah, released in 78 and reissued some years ago in Gerson. In Spain, as a vinyl and a CD.
I'm ordering that one, by the way.
It's a collector's item as well. It's very niche in South Africa. I mean, the folk scene there is tiny.
I climbed up to your house and tapped upon your window, but all I saw within your rooms were paintings of the sea and warm pullovers on the floor and boots with sandy heels and drawings that you'd made of me while sailing out to sea. And you might say
You were sort of stars maybe in South Africa with the group, right?
Well, we were also kind of alternative because we did gigs there and house parties and things like that, but we did it a lot for the expat community, and I really try and avoid them in countries that I'm living in. I avoided them in Belgium, but South Africa, you get sucked into it because I was there during the time of apartheid, and you just couldn't mix with just who you felt like mixing with. Yeah, it was dangerous. And it was only later when I was helping to run a club with Dave Goldsmith called L'Chaim, where a lot of black bands were coming in and playing.
Yeah.
And Roger Lucy, who did the backing vocals from an album, great local artist. They all came in there, and that was very alternative, bit subversive, and get raided all the time and everything. But before that, Flibbertigibbet, we were very much restricted to the places we were allowed to be in, and play music to the people we were allowed to play to. It was very expatish sort of.
So you were kind of stuck with the expats by default.
Yeah, well, but we did play in Swaziland. We went to Labatsi and Botswana and.
Sure.
A few places outside the country, but they were all very, it was all kind of the expat, the Brits, and some Irish, basically.
Yeah.
All of those shows.
Yeah.
And, but we did it because Dave and I wanted to get back into traditional music, particularly, and there's a lot of traditional music in the Flibbertigibbet album, as well as a lot of original stuff, but it's in that idiom. And we really enjoyed, we loved that time with Barry and Joe, the other half of Flibbertigibbet. We had a great time with them. And as I said, we're close still. Barry made my dulcimer, as I mentioned earlier, and they came and visited me a few years ago, and they had a wonderful time in Ireland. We went around a few sessions in Dublin, and they were invited to play at all of them, and they really loved it. And, I hope they come back again someday.
Are they still living in South Africa?
Yeah, no, they're living in Canada. But the thing is that they're in an area where they're quite isolated from music. But recently, I think they were fired up by their experience in Dublin. And recently they've now started writing and performing, and they're doing everything on YouTube. And I thought, and they've got all this better, good equipment and everything. I thought, there you go. You're back in it.
Can you see a possible collaboration again in the future?
I'd love to. If we can maybe do something, it would be something that I would think about maybe in the future. I mean, I haven't said it to them, but I would certainly not discount it at all because, why not?
Right. You made a number with David and Flibbertigibbet. Hey, I did it. That's quite a word. That's quite a mouthful.
It's a difficult word. Yeah, it's a difficult word, Flibbertigibbet.
Made a number of appearances on Dutch television when you were in South Africa. Am I correct?
Well, that was South African television.
Oh.
And in fact, we played on a show that there was a huge controversy about it afterwards because we were singing in Afrikaans. That was just prior to Flibbertigibbet, with a very experimental dancer called Sylvia Glasser and some South African actors who recited poetry. And, that was very cultural. And it was just, the powers that be at the end of it said, this is far too much for the Afrikaans audience. They won't get any of this. And they never put it out. And the producer resigned over it, which was a huge shame because it was massively original. The beginning of South African television. Nobody had done anything like that.
Yeah.
And then later on, we appeared on some folky things, a Christmas show, and we did a couple of other performances as Flibbertigibbet, and with a few extra people, a couple of whom are on the Flibbertigibbet album, who I'm still in touch with as well. You keep those people in your life if you can.
Absolutely.
I have a great respect for the South African folk and traditional musicians who really, a lot of them were championed by David Marks, who ran Third Ear, and he really, he ran a festival every year, still does, and he championed everyone, us included at the beginning, and I think that people like him are so important, and thank you very much to them. People like Ted Carroll and David Marks, they are the people who keep everything going.
Hear, hear. And they're behind the scenes. Their work is never known.
I mean, David was a musician as well, and he had a big hit with a song called Master Jack in South Africa, and he was able to use that as a platform to do other things. But he recorded a lot of the people who later became famous in South Africa. He was behind those scenes long before anyone else, from the 60s.
Well, we thank them and the work they've done.
And because of the apartheid years, none of that music got out to the world. And it's a great shame because some great stuff there. Roger Lucy, John Oakley Smith, Alan Jeffrey, all these people, they were really great musicians in their day. And, their music just didn't get out to the wider world.
You mentioned that you learned stagecraft while in South Africa and learned a great deal about being a stage performer. Can you speak a little on that?
I was in a show. I was in a couple of reviews there, and they were satirical reviews with actors and musicians, and they were very successful. We had audiences every night. They were in sort of club venues in a place called Rocky Street, which was a really, very happening place in Johannesburg. And I was also in a musical. But I felt, that was just a sideline for me to do. I'm not an actor. I don't have any training, and it wouldn't be something that. But I took the stagecraft bit from it, and I thought, well, I can learn to actually use the drama in my performance, and that's how it began, really. Because when I was in Mellow Candle doing gigs, Ted Carroll used to say I looked like a fishwife with my hands on my hips, and that was it, because it was, you were very cool still, and sort of nothing phased you.
I can
the whole
imagine.
thing was to be cool.
Sure. So you left South Africa. How did you wind up eventually making the decision to return to the UK?
Well, I think I always felt that really I couldn't, if I ever was going to have children, I couldn't really bring them up there, maybe because the political system.
Well,
it was really, the propaganda and the stuff that happened. I mean, Roger Lucy has made an album all about this, and he was banned for a long time. He was basically run out of the country. His career was taken away. He changed careers. He came back years later. You couldn't be an artist doing that kind of material. You just couldn't do it. Your career would be scuppered in some way by somebody. And I felt that long term, I had to go back to. Well, we went to London, and Dave stayed there. I came back with Ian. We'd parted company by then, and, in 1980, and I came back in '86 to London and stayed there for quite a long time till '97, and then went to Belgium, and then my husband Ian was kind of posted back with an ad agency he was working with, and he was offered the job in Dublin, and I thought, well, this seems like a good idea, and that's where I've been ever since, and I've kind of really got back into the whole thing of being Irish and being away for many years. I've taken those influences, but at heart I'm an Irish girl.
You were involved in a BBC4 special entitled Family Ties. It was focused on genealogy, and your family story was the focus of this episode that I watched. And I'd like to know how that all came about. It was fascinating. It was the story of your grandmother, if I'm not mistaken, and it was very moving.
Well, I think I got interested in because I worked very near where I could get all the birth, marriage, and death certificates. And I started up an interest in the family tree and genealogy, because my baby book, which I still have, had, a tree for both sides of the family, but there were a whole lot of names missing from my grandmother's side. And I asked my mother, and she said, I don't know who those people would be. We never dared to ask, so it was intriguing. And when I went to look for my grandmother's birth date, simply nothing under the name that she, it was nothing. And I looked and looked and looked and looked for about a year. And then I found a marriage certificate, which was several years after I thought it should, she'd had 3 children by then. And then that whole story of the 2 husbands and a double life, which she led, came out in about really 1999 and 2000. And I found her first family, the descendants, and we're all one family now ever since.
Amazing.
It is an extraordinary story. She was a singer. She lived in China for a few years. She was married to a man who she thought was American, but he was actually half Chinese, which was a no-no in the sort of British and American circles in China in 1915 to 1920.
Oh, wow.
And, it was really a no-no. And I think she only found out when she was there, and when she was trying to get back in 1919 away from him because he did something, I don't know what. We've never been able to find out what. And she was pregnant with her second child, and she came back and had the second child. But because she had parted from him, her parents, her father particularly, was very disapproving. And she was in the show business trade at the time.
Interesting.
Shows, and she had to leave the 2 children. They were taken into her father's family, and eventually she was ostracized.
Oh,
And it was a very sad story because she never saw
yes.
them again after about 1929. She never saw
Yeah.
them again, and then she came to Ireland to escape being found out, I think, because in fact she was a bigamist. And
Yeah.
she had married, my grandfather didn't know that when he married her. She had, her marriage certificate was all mixed up with the name of her father was half her husband's name and half her father's name. And all these facts were sort of, it was a whole
Sure.
subterfuge. And I found her through a ship's passenger list eventually and found out that most of the story. But, it's a fascinating story. And they decided to make, there were a series of these stories. And Mother of Pearl, as this was one of them. And so we participated. The new family members participated in the story of uncovering her story. And
Wonderful.
Nina, her name was. But she was an amazing woman, and I don't know how she managed to get through life with that story behind her
Yeah.
and not tell anyone.
And yet she was a bit of an iconoclast, maybe not unlike yourself. Yeah.
Oh, she was an amazing woman, but and the more came out about that story even only a few years ago about the husband's father, and a whole other story came out that one of my cousins uncovered. So, it seems to be, and we've never found out what happened to him in the end. The half Chinese husband.
He went
was
back to
adopted
China
by
and that was it.
Well, he was adopted by a British couple in
Yeah.
in the 19th century, late 19th century, and he vanished in 1946. He was never heard of again. So he must have died somewhere in China or in Macau or somewhere.
Sure.
And when the Japanese came in, goodness knows what happened
No.
to him. We've never been able to find out. And you can't ask any questions in China.
Solstice brings the children's to an end. The summer's into chambers cold, dressed as she is in her green and gold. Winter moons turn in another skies, spun by a ghostly sailor's hand, freezing the earth of another life. If the winter winds have made you cold, and you not be glad they have not made you old with wandering and learning how to fly. All that stands is fall to ash and sand, willing to grasp the spirit's hand, brings sadness raining from within the song of songs. Tell me, show me, teach me where you've been. Did you see shadows of unicorns? Did you wear laurels or a crown of thorns?
How about Mellow Candle and current work? What's the link?
The link is that I think are always Mellow Candle's always at the back of my mind because it's it's my original creative work, and it's always sits there as a base. And it's always in the background. It has informed my later work, although I've gone in many different directions. The originality of it has stayed with me as being an important thing. I feel I must always change and adapt and move with the times, and it's very important to keep challenging oneself. And this album that I'm doing in the traditional idiom, it's a big thing for me because it's really my coming back to Ireland album. Although I've been back for my 21st year now, it's the album that's going to put me in that whole traditional idiom squarely. I do a lot of
Yes.
traditional singing. I go to the singers clubs, the Goleen, on Goleen, which is a very famous traditional singing club here. And I do a lot of traditional singing Zooms. And for me, it's important to make an album, but I've written the songs in the tradition with the big themes of the day over the last few hundred years.
Yes.
Tragedy at sea, betrayal, love, lots of different themes. The famine or the great hunger, that's behind one of the big songs there. And I've written a song about Padraig Pearse, one of the big movers in the Easter Rising. So those songs are all going to be on that album, and that means a lot to me to do this record.
And the name of this latest project will be Hark the Voice That Sings for All.
Yeah, new songs in an ancient tradition.
Well, I want to mention, while I have you here, where we can find your work online. I've got some links here that I'd like to read. And if you have any to add, Alison, please do so at this time. I know you have your own site, which is www.alisonodonnell, and that's ALISONODONNELL.com. And you've got a Bandcamp page as well, and that's AlisonO'Donnell.bandcamp.com.
Yeah, they're the two main sites where you can see all my work there and listen to all my work free, and people don't have to buy; they can listen.
Yeah.
Various record labels allow me to. Everyone except Universal, of course, we're allowed to put up the records we've made. But the small independents are much kinder like that, and
right.
Nearly all my stuff is up there. There's a couple of Mellow Candle tracks that I'm allowed to put up, but nothing from the main album, obviously.
Sure.
That, you have to go to the shops for that.
You got to go to the shop. There's loads of streaming content from all of the groups that Alison works with on various sites.
I think you've covered nearly all of the people that
I think we have.
A lot.
But all of this material streams, and you can listen to all of these projects online, and there's so much to listen to. And we love you, Alison. Your work is it's a glorious thing, and I really appreciate the time you've taken with me today to speak about all of this. And it's been a real pleasure, and I feel like I've made a friend.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for inviting me, because I'd love to get my work out to a wider audience in America.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you have loads of American fans. We're here, but perhaps this will be a good chance for people to get a reminder to take a look, and maybe some labels too.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Michael.
Take care. I'll be in touch.
Say goodbye now, yeah?
Yes, goodbye.
Okay, I'm going to leave now. See you.
Charity shops and the need to be thrifty. Flea markets beckon again, now I'm 50. Bells with bottoms spreading their flares. Festival stalls calling out their wares. What goes around comes around once more, then goes away again like fine folklore. That tall tree is 1,000 books tomorrow, bought and sold, Lord on the road. Belly wheels and road rage, keach and kin, come and go, like everything. Dying young and hippie, living in sin. It all goes round and round again. It all goes round and round again. Dating, so dating, but still lovely. Told her mother she was misunderstood. The music I like you don't think any good. Now she's in a house and a garage full of soul. She's a retro girl with a head full of ghosts. Jack the Ripper pulls in his murderous hand. Water plum oranges for the damned. Wise Medieval tries to lead us to a better way. Be it thistles and thorns, mortals buzzing in. Belly wheels and road rage, keach and kin, come and go, like everything. Dying young and hippie, living in sin. It all goes round and round again. It all goes round and round again. Dated, so dated, but still lovely.
want to settle scores. Turn your cheek from the burning flame to the still of a lake or a kitten's soft ball. Deli meals and road rage, keech and kin, come and go, like everything. Dying young and living in sin. It all goes round and round again. It all goes round and round again. Date, so poor date, but still loving. It all goes round and round again. It all goes round and round again. Date, so poor date, but still lovely. Thank you for your really, you've really taken on my whole career. I really thank you for that interest, because it's, it's made me think about a lot of things, and it's been really interesting.
If you like this episode and want to know more about it, you can find related links and more at lowprofilepodcast.com. Previous episodes of this show are also available there, and it airs on KAOS 89.3 FM in Olympia, Washington, Fridays at 4 p.m. Pacific Time. This episode features Alison O'Donnell, was hosted by Michael Sean Coleman, engineered by Wes Harbison, and produced and edited by me, Mark Lee Morrison. Thanks for listening. Hey, just dropping in to let you know that Low Profile's taking a mid-season break. There's still plenty more episodes to look forward to this season, and beyond that, there's no end in sight. Just time to chill out for a little bit, if that's cool with y'all. So enjoy the beginning of your summer, and I'll catch you in July.